The year was 1875. The American frontier, vast, unforgiving, and brimming with both promise and peril. It was a land where the ancient and the new collided with thunderous force, where native tribes fought to preserve their sacred ways against the relentless tide of pioneers pushing westward. In the golden light of a late summer afternoon, Pocahontas stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the sweeping valley her people had called home for countless generations. Her raven hair danced in the wind, adorned with a single eagle feather, a symbol of her status as daughter of Chief Powhatan, leader of one of the last great free tribes in the Wyoming Territory. At 22, her eyes held wisdom beyond her years, having witnessed both the beauty and brutality of a changing world. The sound of distant hoofbeats drew her attention to the valley below. A caravan of wagons, white settlers, winding their way through the golden grasslands like a snake. Her father had warned of their coming. More encroachers, more broken promises, more reason to retreat further into the mountains. But something made her linger. A lone rider had separated from the caravan, guiding his chestnut stallion toward the river, Hare River, where generations of her people had fished and bathed and prayed. Anger flared within her chest, but curiosity burned brighter. John Smith pulled the reins gently, bringing his horse to a stop at the riverbank. At 30, his face was weathered by years of frontier life, his blue eyes sharp beneath the brim of his worn leather hat. Unlike many who ventured west, he came not for gold or glory, but for something more elusive, a place to belong after years of wandering. As a cartographer hired to map the uncharted territories for the expanding railroad, he had developed a respect for the land that few of his companions shared. He dismounted, removing his hat as he knelt beside the crystal waters. Something about this place felt sacred. The reflection that appeared beside his own in the water made him turn with a start. There she stood, a vision in buckskin and beads, her expression a complex mixture of wariness and wonder. "You shouldn't be here," she said in perfect English, surprising him. "This is Shoshone land." John rose slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I meant no disrespect," the water called to me. A flicker of understanding crossed her features. "It calls to many. Few listen. I've always tried to hear what the land has to say," he replied, offering a small smile. "I'm John Smith." She hesitated, weighing generations of tribal caution against the inexplicable pull she felt toward this stranger. "Pocahontas," she finally answered, the name itself a bridge between their worlds. Neither could have known that this chance meeting by the river would change not only their lives but would become a whispered legend throughout the untamed West, a tale of love that refused to be bound by blood, tradition, or the bitter wounds of history. Days passed, turning into weeks, as the settlers established a temporary camp in the valley. Chief Powhatan watched with growing unease, sending scouts to monitor their movements while maintaining a cautious distance. The tribal council argued long into the night about whether to drive the intruders away or negotiate boundaries. Meanwhile, Pocahontas found herself drawn repeatedly to the river, telling herself she was merely keeping watch on the strangers. But her heart knew the truth. She was hoping to glimpse the blue-eyed cartographer again. John similarly invented reasons to venture away from camp alone. Claiming to need measurements of the surrounding terrain, he would ride to the river, his sketchbook in hand, but his mind filled with thoughts of the chief's daughter. Their third meeting happened beneath a canopy of cottonwood trees, where the afternoon sun filtered through leaves like nature's own stained glass. "You keep returning," she observed, stepping out from behind a massive trunk. John smiled, closing his sketchbook. "I'm mapping the area. And you? Why does the chief's daughter risk meeting a stranger?" Pocahontas approached, her curiosity overtaking caution. "How do you know who I am? People talk, even about things they fear." He hesitated. "They say your father is a great warrior, that he has fought the white man's expansion for decades, and your people say he is savage for defending what has always been ours." There was no anger in her voice, just a weary truth. John shook his head. "Not all of us believe those stories. Some of us came west to escape such thinking." Something in his sincerity touched her. For the first time she sat beside him, asking about the mysterious East he had left behind. He spoke of crowded cities and ocean voyages, of books and machines and things she had only heard whispered about. In turn, she shared the stories of her people, tales of how the mountains were formed by great spirits, how her ancestors had followed the buffalo for 1,000 years. As dusk approached, she taught him Shoshone words for the birds that called overhead, laughing at his clumsy pronunciation. And when their hands accidentally touched while reaching for a fallen eagle feather, neither pulled away immediately. "I should go," she finally said. "The setting sun, a reminder of duties and divides." "Will you come tomorrow?" he asked, trying to keep the hope from his voice. Pocahontas looked at him with eyes that seemed to see through to his soul. "It would be wiser if I didn't." But wisdom often surrenders to the heart's calling, and the next day found them both at the river once more. Their secret meetings continued, each day revealing more about the other, their dreams, their doubts, their different yet strangely parallel lives. John showed her how to use his compass and spyglass. She demonstrated how to move silently through the forest and read the stories written in animal tracks. One evening, as a summer storm gathered on the horizon, they took shelter in a small cave overlooking the valley. Thunder rolled across the darkening sky as rain began to fall in heavy sheets. "My father says a storm like this is the sky spirits arguing," Pocahontas said, watching lightning split the darkened clouds. John sat beside her, closer than they had ever been. "What are they arguing about?" She turned to him, her expression suddenly serious. "Perhaps about us." The air between them changed, charged with something more powerful than the lightning outside. John reached up slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Would that be such a terrible argument?" "My people have lost so much to yours," she whispered, though she didn't move away. "Our lands, our traditions, our very lives." "I'm not asking for anything to be lost," he said softly, "only for something to be found." When their lips finally met, it was like two worlds colliding, gentle yet earth-shattering. The storm outside faded away as they held each other, both knowing they had crossed a boundary from which there was no return. The peace between the settlers and the tribe grew increasingly fragile as summer gave way to autumn. What had begun as a temporary camp was developing into something more permanent, foundations being laid, hunting parties venturing further into tribal lands. Chief Powhatan noticed changes in his daughter, her distracted gaze, her frequent absences, her newfound interest in settler ways. His suspicions grew until one evening, he assigned a young warrior to follow her at a distance. That night, the tribal drums beat with an ominous rhythm. Pocahontas was summoned to her father's lodge, where the council elders sat in stern judgment. The warrior had reported everything, her meetings with the white man, their intimate conversations, their forbidden embrace. "You have betrayed your people," her father said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "This man is our enemy. He is not like the others," she argued, standing tall despite the shame burning in her chest. "He respects our ways, our land. He is mapping our territory for the iron horse that will bring thousands more," an elder cut in. His soft words changed nothing. Chief Powhatan rose, towering over his daughter. "You will not see him again. When the moon is full, you will marry Red Wolf, who has proven his loyalty to our tribe. This is my decision as your chief and your father." Across the valley, John faced his own reckoning. The expedition leader, a hard-eyed man named Wilkes, confronted him with snarling disgust. Fraternizing with savages, Wilkes spat, throwing John's sketches to the ground, drawings not just of landscapes but of Pocahontas. "You're jeopardizing everything we've worked for. She's helped me understand this land better than months of surveying could," John defended, though he knew it was far more than that. Wilkes laughed coldly. "Next you'll tell me you've fallen in love with the girl." When John didn't deny it, the man's expression darkened. "You fool, these negotiations are delicate. The railroad's coming through, with or without their blessing. If you've led that girl to believe otherwise, I've told her only the truth as I know it," John interrupted. "Then you're an even bigger fool than I thought." Wilkes leaned in, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Stay away from her, Smith, or I'll make sure Chief Powhatan learns exactly what our plans are for his precious valley." That night, both lovers lay awake under the same stars, separated by distance but united in their anguish. The world was conspiring to pull them apart, and the forces arrayed against them seemed insurmountable. But love, once ignited, burns with defiant flame. Dawn broke over the valley with an unseasonable chill, as if nature itself sensed the conflict brewing. Despite the warnings, despite the risks, Pocahontas slipped away to their meeting place, praying John would understand her unspoken message from the day before, a white river stone placed on a fallen log, their signal for urgent news. He was already waiting, his face drawn with worry. They fell into each other's arms with desperate relief. "They've forbidden me to see you," she whispered against his chest. My father has arranged a marriage. John held her tighter. Wilkes threatened to tell your father about the railroad's true plans if I continued to meet you. Pocahontas pulled back, searching his face. What plans? He couldn't lie to her, not now, not ever. They intend to build directly through the sacred burial grounds. The maps I've made, they'll use them regardless of what I say now. The betrayal cut deep, but she saw the torment in his eyes. You didn't know. I should have. I was so focused on the land's features that I failed to see its heart. He took her hands in his. But I see it now. Through you. In that moment, the choice crystallized before them with startling clarity. Neither could return to their people with divided loyalties. Neither could bear the thought of life without the other. There's a place, John said suddenly. West of here, beyond Thunder Canyon. A hidden valley I discovered last spring, but kept off my maps. It's fertile land with a waterfall and caves for shelter. We could leave everything behind, she finished, both terrified and exhilarated by the thought. It would be a hard life, he warned. Pocahontas looked toward her village, then to the settler camp. Two worlds that had given her life and shaped her being, yet neither could accommodate the future her heart demanded. A hard life of our choosing is better than an easy one in a gilded cage, she said finally, her decision made. They formed their plan in hurried whispers, supplies to gather, the best route to take, when to depart. 2 days hence, when the hunting parties from both communities would be away, they would meet at sunset and journey through the night. As they reluctantly parted, neither suspected they were being watched from the shadow of a distant ridge, by Red Wolf, the warrior who had been promised Pocahontas's hand. The day of their planned escape dawned bright and clear. Pocahontas moved through her village with forced normalcy, gathering small essentials, dried meat, medicinal herbs, an extra knife, items that wouldn't be missed immediately. Each familiar face she passed sent a pang through her heart. These were her people. This was her heritage. Was she betraying it all for love? In the settler camp, John prepared with equal stealth. He collected ammunition, maps, fishing line, and trading goods. His horse was given extra attention. Their lives might depend on its strength and speed in the coming days. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, tension mounted on both sides of the valley. Red Wolf had reported his findings to Chief Powhatan, who now waited in cold fury for his daughter to make her move. Meanwhile, Wilkes had noticed John's preparations and stationed men to watch his tent. The sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, a beauty neither lover could appreciate, as they separately navigated the increasing dangers around them. Pocahontas slipped away during the evening meal, using a creek bed to mask her tracks. She reached their meeting place as the first stars appeared, her heart pounding with fear and anticipation. Minutes stretched into an hour. John hadn't come. Unknown to her, he was fighting for his freedom, and possibly his life. Wilkes and 3 men had confronted him as he attempted to leave camp. Going somewhere, Smith, Wilkes sneered, blocking his path. Just evening rounds, John replied evenly, though his loaded saddlebags told a different story. Funny thing, Wilkes continued, circling him like a predator. Red Wolf from the tribe came to us with an interesting tale. Seems the chief's daughter is planning to run off tonight, with you. John's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. No, Wilkes nodded to his men, who grabbed John's arms. Then you won't mind staying in camp tonight, for your own protection, of course. Indians might not take kindly to one of their women being defiled by a white man. They dragged him toward the supply tent, intending to tie him until morning. But John Smith hadn't survived years on the frontier by being easily subdued. With a sudden surge of strength born of desperation, he broke free, landing a solid punch on the nearest man before sprinting toward the horses. Shouts erupted behind him. A shot rang out, the bullet splintering a wagon wheel inches from his head. He vaulted onto his horse without bothering with a saddle, and kicked it into a gallop, heading not for the meeting place but directly toward the Shoshone village. Pocahontas had waited long enough to know something had gone terribly wrong. She was preparing to risk returning to investigate, when thundering hoofbeats approached from an unexpected direction. To her shock, John appeared, riding hard with settlers in pursuit. They know, he shouted, reaching down to pull her up behind him without slowing. We have to go, Now, she leapt onto the horse with practiced grace, clinging to his waist as they rode toward the setting sun. Behind them, the pursuit grew, not just settlers now, but Shoshone warriors as well, alerted by the commotion. What followed was a desperate race through darkening canyons, across shallow river crossings chosen to obscure their trail, through tight passages where pursuing horses would be forced to slow. John's knowledge of the terrain and Pocahontas's wilderness instincts made them formidable quarry. As midnight approached, they found themselves trapped between towering cliffs with the sound of pursuit growing closer. The only way forward was a treacherous mountain pass that few had ever attempted in daylight, let alone under a quarter moon. "We have no choice," John said grimly. "If we can make it through, they won't follow." Pocahontas nodded, her face resolute. "Then we ride." They dismounted, leading the exhausted horse up the narrow winding trail. Loose rocks skittered down the mountainside with each step. One wrong move meant certain death on the jagged rocks hundreds of feet below. Halfway up, disaster struck. The trail crumbled beneath the horse's hooves, sending the animal into a panic. It reared, nearly dragging John over the edge before pulling free and bolting back down the path. "The supplies," John gasped, watching as their carefully gathered essentials disappeared with the horse. Pocahontas grabbed his arm, preventing him from pursuing. "Let it go. We have only ourselves now." They continued on foot, each step a test of courage, as the path grew steeper and more treacherous. Below, their pursuers spotted the riderless horse and followed its trail to the base of the pass. Torches illuminated the night as both settlers and tribesmen gathered, looking up at the deadly route their quarry had chosen. "No one survives Thunder Pass at night," Red Wolf declared, his voice carrying on the wind. Wilkes spat on the ground. "Let the mountain have them then." As dawn broke, John and Pocahontas emerged on the other side of the pass, exhausted, scraped, and bruised, but alive. Before them stretched a vista few white men had ever seen, a hidden valley nestled between protective mountains, with a silver ribbon of waterfall, cascading into a clear lake. "We made it," John breathed, taking in the paradise that would become their home. Pocahontas gazed back at the pass they had conquered, knowing the gulf it represented was more than physical. They had crossed from one life into another, leaving behind all that was familiar for the unknown path they would forge together. "Now," she said, taking his hand, "we truly begin." The first year in the hidden valley tested them in ways neither could have imagined. Winter came early and harsh, forcing them to create shelter in one of the larger caves near the waterfall. Game grew scarce, requiring them to survive on stored nuts, dried berries, and whatever fish they could coax from the partially frozen lake. John's pioneering skills served them well. He crafted simple furniture, set snares, and built a smoke room for preserving meat. Pocahontas's knowledge of plants, medicines, and seasonal cycles proved equally vital. She wove baskets from reeds, tanned hides for clothing, and kept track of the edible plants that would emerge with spring's first warmth. They worked in companionable silence most days, developing a rhythm that required few words. At night, by firelight, they shared stories, his of ocean voyages and distant cities, hers of tribal legends and the wisdom of ancestors. In this blending of worlds, they created something entirely new. When spring finally arrived, they planted seeds John had carried in his pockets: carrots, beans, corn. Pocahontas showed him how to encourage the wild berries to produce more abundantly. They built a proper cabin near the lake, its construction reflecting both traditional Shoshone techniques and frontier methods. Their isolation was complete but rarely lonely. They had chosen each other, and in that choice found a freedom few ever know, to create a life unburdened by the expectations and prejudices of others. Summer brought abundance, fields flourishing, wild fruit ripening in profusion, fish leaping in the crystal waters. It also brought new life in the form of a child growing within Pocahontas. Their joy at this discovery was tempered by practical concerns. Birthing a child without the support of family or medicine would be dangerous. "My mother trained as a midwife," Pocahontas reassured John, as they sat by the lake one evening, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. "She taught me what to watch for, what herbs to use. Still, if anything happened to you..." His voice trailed off, unable to complete the thought. She took his face in her hands, her eyes reflecting the setting sun. "This child is the bridge between our worlds, John. A new beginning neither of our peoples could imagine." We must have faith. As autumn painted the valley in gold and crimson, they prepared for both winter and childbirth, storing food, gathering extra furs, drying medicinal herbs. John carved a cradle from aspen wood, while Pocahontas sewed tiny garments from the softest deerskin. Their daughter arrived with the first snow, a perfect blend of both parents with John's blue eyes and Pocahontas's copper skin. They named her Dawn, for she represented the beginning of something beautiful and unprecedented. Years passed, seasons turning in their peaceful valley. Dawn grew into a curious, capable child who spoke a unique mixture of English and Shoshone, who could read the stars like her mother and sketch maps like her father. 2 more children joined their family, a boy named River and another girl called Sky. They created their own traditions, celebrating the turning of seasons with rituals that honored both their heritages. On summer solstice, they would climb to the highest point in the valley to watch the sun set, telling the children stories of both their peoples. At harvest, they gave thanks in 2 languages. Winter nights were filled with tales of distant places, some remembered, some imagined. Sometimes, Pocahontas would stand at the edge of the valley, looking toward the pass they had crossed so many years before. Did her father still live? Had her tribe maintained their lands against the relentless push westward? The questions hung in the air, unanswered, but not forgotten. John similarly wondered about the world beyond. Had the railroad come through as planned? What new technologies had emerged in their absence? These thoughts came less frequently as the years passed, as their chosen world became more real than the one they had left behind. 15 years after their escape, change found them nonetheless. Dawn, now a young woman of 14, spotted smoke signals rising from beyond Thunder Pass, signals in the Shoshone pattern. Someone's trying to communicate, she told her parents, her expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. None of the children had ever seen anyone outside their family. John and Pocahontas exchanged worried glances. They had always known this day might come, when the outside world would reach into their sanctuary. After careful deliberation, John climbed to a high ridge and sent a cautious response. 3 days later, a small party of Shoshone appeared at the pass entrance, led by an elderly man, whose lined face broke into astonishment upon seeing Pocahontas. "Uncle Gray Wolf," she whispered, recognizing her father's younger brother, now an old man himself. The reunion was emotional but tentative. Gray Wolf explained that Chief Powhatan had died 5 winters past. The tribe had been forced onto a reservation, but those who remained held onto their ways as best they could. Stories of Pocahontas and her white husband had become legend among both natives and settlers, the lovers who had chosen freedom over safety, who had vanished into the mountains rather than surrender their bond. "Some say you died in the pass," Gray Wolf told them as they sat around the family's fire. "Others believe the spirits protected you. Young couples from both sides pray to your example when their families oppose their union." John's laugh held a note of disbelief. "We're myths now." Gray Wolf's weathered face grew serious. "In a world increasingly divided, your story gives hope. That is why I sought you, to see if the legend lived." He stayed for 7 days, getting to know the children who carried his bloodline, marveling at the life John and Pocahontas had built from nothing. Before leaving, he gave them news that the world beyond had changed dramatically. The railroad had indeed come, but had bypassed the sacred burial grounds after unexpected resistance from white settlers who had joined with the Shoshone in protest. "Your disappearance changed hearts," Gray Wolf explained. "When both sides thought you dead in the mountain pass, something broke in them. Your love became a symbol of what might have been." After his departure, life in the valley continued, but with a new awareness of their place in a larger story. When their children eventually ventured out to explore the changing world beyond, they carried with them the lessons of the valley, that love transcends boundaries, that freedom requires courage, that one need not choose between heritages, but can forge a new path honoring both. John and Pocahontas remained in their valley into old age, their hair turning silver, their faces etched with lines of laughter and wisdom. They would occasionally receive visitors, curious seekers who had heard the legend and braved the past to discover its truth. To these pilgrims of the heart, the aging couple would share their simple philosophy: the greatest freedom comes not from escaping the world, but from creating your own. When John passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76, Pocahontas laid him to rest beneath twin cottonwoods overlooking the lake. She lived 5 more years, tending their garden, telling stories to visiting grandchildren, keeping alive the flame they had kindled together. Upon her death, their children buried her beside John, erecting a monument that combined a traditional Shoshone spirit post with a pioneer marker. The inscription, carved in both English and Shoshone, read simply, "They chose love." The valley remains to this day, not on any official map, but known to those who seek it. Those who make the journey find not only the grave markers and the remnants of a cabin long reclaimed by nature, but something more intangible, a sense of possibility, of worlds bridged rather than divided. For love, like legend, never truly dies. It echoes across canyons and generations, whispering that the boundaries we create are less real than the connections we forge, if only we have the courage to reach across the divides. In a world that often seems determined to sort us into tribes, by politics, by culture, by belief, the story of Pocahontas and John Smith reminds us that the human heart recognizes no such boundaries. Their love was not just a rejection of limitations, but an affirmation of something greater, the freedom to define ourselves beyond the categories others would assign us. Perhaps that is why their legend persists, why it calls to something deep within our collective consciousness. In choosing each other despite every external pressure to conform, they embodied the purest form of liberty, the right to determine one's own path, to build one's own world, to love whom one chooses. Their hidden valley stands as metaphor for the spaces we must create in our own lives, sanctuaries where we can be true to ourselves and our deepest connections, regardless of convention or convenience. Such spaces require sacrifice to build and courage to maintain, but within them lies a freedom no external authority can grant or revoke. If this tale of transcendent love has touched your heart, remember that legends grow stronger in the retelling. Share it with those who might need reminding that walls, whether of stone, prejudice, or tradition, can be scaled by those with sufficient determination. Like, comment, and subscribe to hear more stories that challenge us to look beyond the boundaries we've accepted as fixed, to imagine worlds where connection triumphs over division. For in the end, it is not the territories we claim or the traditions we preserve that define us, but the courage with which we love.